co-founder. Yes, we are recording. If you just heard that note, I'm a co-founder and currently senior advisor for Center for Local Prosperity. What we do is we work across Atlantic Canada, all four Atlantic provinces, to help communities, local governments, local groups to build more agency in the future, in the advent of globalization and now really deglobalization for that matter. So this is a relocalization webinar series, kind of a lunch and learn. It's a second one. Towards the end, I will tell you about some of the other upcoming topics that we're going to be covering as well. They happen always on the last Thursday of the month, so keep that in mind and book your calendars for that. So I did mention we're witnessing deglobalization. We're in the middle of trade wars now, and I want to emphasize that it's really not just between Canada and the US, but as people probably can appreciate, it's truly a global thing at this point. So it's going to impact supply chains, availability of different things. And really, it's because Canada's kind of joined at the hip with the US. Whatever happens with the US and its isolation policy, I think it's going to dramatically affect Canada. So as everyone knows, local is now the important thing, and really looking at how do we rebuild local capacity, local suppliers, local supply chains, all of that type of thing, which is going to build, of course, resiliency and agency at the local level. That's a lot of what CLP does. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And in particular, we're going to be talking about how local money can be used for local investment for things that are really important. And right now we're going to be talking about food, which is probably one of the most important things, because that's what we all have in common. We've all got to eat. So food is a critical sector. And we're very happy to have in that regard Linda Best with FarmWorks with us. She's been a co-founder of the organization with it from the very beginning, and the staying power has been absolutely amazing. I'm going to be getting into that a little bit more along the way when we talk with Linda, but I understand you're coming into your 14th year with the organization, and by their way, their AGM is this coming Sunday at the Wolfville Canadian Legion at 2 o'clock. So you can, if you're locally situated, you can be there if you'd like, or you can go online, is my understanding. I went through, Linda, the list of all of the clients, absolutely incredible when they're listed on the website. Beverages, processors, farmers, restaurants, cafes, incredible list of clients that they've developed along the way. So we're very fortunate to have two of those clients today. The first is Paul Hill. Paul has started a company in 2016 called Jamaican Jerk, great line of sauces. And then in 2021, he wanted to expand on that theme, get into a whole lot of other food products, and started a company called Maritime Foods. And Paul, I understand you're up to about 25 SKUs, different products at this point, getting into quite a distribution network. So that's a fantastic story. And I know that food security in our area is very important for us. So I look forward to talking about that. We also have Sebastian Chow on the line. He has started in 2022 a Green Garden Farm. Interesting model, I have to say. I would describe you as a bespoke producer, meaning that custom growing what is needed by many of the restaurants in Halifax, some of the farmers market work, but really what's in demand, what is needed out there, high value crops of different kinds. So really trying to work that niche, doing it low impact and organic methods. So that's fantastic, I think, way to go about things. So what we're going to be doing here over the next hour is I'll be having a conversation, and after a while, we're going to open it up for Q&A. And what I'd like to ask is if you do have a question, please put it in the chat box. Andy Horsnell is on the line. Andy, hello. He is going to be our tech guy. He's the executive director for the Center for
Hi, everybody.
And so he'll be monitoring the chat, hopefully troubleshooting anything else that might happen. And we can get some of those questions out and we can discuss some of those. So I think that would be looking forward to that part as well. So what I'd like to do is start with Paul and Sebastian. I'd like to understand what it's like starting a business in the past few years. And in particular, most startups, they need financing of some kind. Paul, in your case, more recently, I think it's more expansion capital that you need. And so I'd really like to ask either one of you, feel free to jump in. What's it like out there in the small, medium-sized business world to get the financing that you need? What options have you had available to you? What have been some of the downfalls of other sources where you really just can't get what you need?
Bob, I must say that finding funding it's one of the most challenging part of doing business. And as you know, you need cash flow to grow, right? And if you don't have the funds to start your business, you're going to have problems growing. So you can only get so far with your cash, right? But when you go to say the big banks and stuff like that, the requirements are, they're not in favor for a startup. They're not in favor for small businesses because you need to be doing a certain revenue. You need to be in business for so long. They need to see a solid business plan and with your projections and stuff like that. And if your projections aren't what they're looking for, then good luck. Dealing with FarmWorks, FarmWorks they look beyond that. They look at they do look at your business plan. They look at your enthusiasm. They look at the numbers you've been doing, obviously, but then the expectations is not as large or high as the big bank. And so dealing with I've never really dealt with the big banks. Like even to this stage, like I don't have a loan with the big bank because they just it's just impossible.
So it seems like you've got to almost be a going concern where you've been in business a while, you're stable, you've got predictable cash flow, all of that in place, and then they'll feel comfortable.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
and just to tag team onto that, what Paul was saying is, for on the small farms side of things, a bank is going to look at your business plan and look at your projections, and they're never going to finance that anyway, no matter what, because a small farm is never going to make the type of money that they, that we would need to bring in to take that loan and for them to take that risk.
So it's really a risk issue, it sounds like, for banks. And what about other sources of funding? I know there's well, I always think of startup world, there's family and friends, of course, tapping into that, but then there's a number of government programs in the region. Some of them are tuned in different directions depending on which sector you're in. Have either of you looked at any of that?
Personally, the government programs, they make it sound great, but they're not easily accessible. It's not that easy as they say. So I haven't really used any of the programs personally.
Okay, so it sounds
Because
like,
they're just because when you look at it, like if I need a piece of equipment right now, I need to come up with the money. So if it costs $12,000, I need to come up with $12,000 to purchase that equipment, fill out a form online, and then get my money, get some of the money back. 6-7 months, even later than that. Later, you know what I mean? So we don't have that cash flow to do that. So
yeah.
that is why that's why it's so difficult. Yeah, but the programs are great if you have the money to fund them yourself.
To be able to cash flow your work.
Yes, yeah, they're great programs. Don't get me wrong. It's just that small businesses, their biggest challenge is cash flow.
Yeah.
Right, and so and I don't think that's taken into consideration when they come up with all the stipulations to get the loans.
Yeah. Yeah. Sebastian, how about you? Have you looked at any kind of government funding as well?
Yeah, we have received some government grants and government help from the agricultural programs, and for green gardens, for our style of farming, which is more sort of market gardening, so small scale, no four-wheel tractors in the fields. I think luckily that style of farming, maybe you're able to slowly, it doesn't require so much in like startup, unlike, let's say, a dairy farm or something where you need all of that infrastructure and you need all of that gear. We were able to sort of grow slowly, which was good because for farm financing, or to get access to government programs for farms, a lot of most of the programs you need to start. They want to see 2 years of farming income statements, which means that you don't have access to those programs until you've been farming for 2 years. And I guess the program to get into once you've done that is one called Get Growing, which you need your 2 years of income statement, but then your farming income needs to be below 30,000 because it's for startup farms. But our goal here was to be above 30K by 2 years. And so we weren't then eligible for that program. Once you've hit 30K and more, then you're eligible for a whole host of other programs. But the challenge was that those first 2 years, pretty much we weren't eligible for anything on the government program list.
So it sounds like for both of you, it was a question of, cash flow is king and you kind of have to do this slow organic buildup, focus on revenue and slowly working that back into the company and so on. So a question is, how did you find out about FarmWorks?
I was at a Sobeys roadshow in the Valley at a hotel. I forgot the name of the hotel, and Linda was up speaking. I was supposed to go up and speak myself. Linda went up and she was speaking, and she was talking about food security and all that stuff. And she took all my lines. I didn't really, everything I wanted to talk about, she already talked about it. And I said, oh, this lady, she's just like me. We got the same goals and stuff like that. So I left because there were so many people around her when I was leaving. I didn't get to meet her, but we got connected again through I forgot, maybe it was Steve Reed or someone connected us, and that's how we got connected with FarmWorks.
Okay. Yeah. And Sebastian, how about you?
We knew a cafe that FarmWorks had worked with, Cafe Good Luck in Dartmouth. And it was the owner, Sonny, who was kind of like, oh, Linda is a great person to work with. If you need something, you should definitely contact Linda. The rest is history, as they say. Well, hopefully there's more. There's a future as well in that.
Okay.
Linda is a legend.
Why?
Linda is a legend.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Lindy, I do have to hand it to you. You've been, the staying power has been amazing. Slowly, speaking about startups, it's a whole nother startup story in itself about how FarmWorks has just year over year continued to build the base for everything. And I do want to get into that. But first, Paul, Sebastian, why is FarmWorks a viable option in terms of financing for what you've been needing?
They're easy to deal with. They understand your business, and because FarmWorks, is small, they understand small businesses. They understand it takes time to grow. So it's and you don't have to go through the ringer with them. It's just because they understand, and I don't know. It's very difficult. I just think that they understand small business, and that's why. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So less paperwork, so to speak, and more of a personal.
Yes, it's more personable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sebastian, what's been your experience?
Well, I think the main thing for me is just the sort of what FarmWorks stands for and what their mandate is compared, if you again compare it back to like the other option, the traditional options of like a bank or something. Like a bank has, they have their idea of what they're going to loan to. And as I said, like small farming rarely falls into that category. But, FarmWorks understands, like Paul said, what needs to be done and who needs to be brought to the table for food resilience in our province. And so to help, businesses like Paul's and to help farms like mine, FarmWorks understands what that means. And so to work with FarmWorks was very simple, easy, and at the top of it all is enjoyable. Like to see Linda comes out to visit. She pops by every once in a while, and it's great to see somebody who cares about how we're doing, and it's not just where's my money this month, but it's how are you doing? Do you need anything? Well done. A nice pat on the back from Linda is the best thing ever.
And Bob, can I add to that? I also think that because I know for me, all of us really, we're in this to help with food security and all that stuff. And Linda shares the same goal, to see this industry see this industry grow. So when we have entrepreneurs like herself coming up with huge ambition to help, improve food security in Nova Scotia, I think that Linda is and FarmWorks. That's what FarmWorks is all about. It's not just about this transaction. It's not just about transactions like the bank. It's all about transactions. With FarmWorks, it's not just about transactions. It's about building our industry and helping our farmers to grow and helping these small businesses to grow. So it's not just about a transaction. FarmWorks is more than that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Paul. It strikes me that the term alignment where the mandate of all three of you really, and probably the rest of the clients, are all aligned around that common concern. So it's not just about the money. It's not just about the risk profile.
Yeah.
Really the whole mandate. So Linda, I want to take it over to you. You know, I mentioned at the beginning, FarmWorks got started in 2011, and you know, I know there's a number of CEDIFs in the province at this point, but, and by the way, if people don't know, we call them CEDIFs. It's Community Economic Development Investment Fund. They were started, I think, in 99, if I'm not mistaken, by the province. We can get into how those work with some of the investment benefits for investors. But Linda, just a little bit of background maybe on FarmWorks. If you could, what's been the total investment to date? How many ventures, how many investment offerings have you had out there?
Thanks, Bob. But before I start talking about that, I just want to thank Paul and Sebastian for being here today, because they're both really busy people. And I was asking Sebastian what all he's planting out and so on and so forth. So thanks, guys, for being here. And as with all our clients, it's a pleasure to work with people like this. So we have, FarmWorks started, as you said, our first offer was in 2012, and that offer we brought in 223,300. And the most recent offer, we only brought in 300,000 because of the fact that we had applied to get past the $6 million cap that's been put on this, on us specifically, because we are a portfolio, a blind pool. We lend, as you see, to a whole lot of clients. So unfortunately, until we work our way through dealing with the Securities Commission and reporting under international financial regulatory standards, we're kind of limited. We'll always have money to lend, but we've got to get past this this current challenge that we are facing. And any CEDIF that operates the way we do would hit that $6 million fence that we have to get over. So over the years, we had, because of the fact that we could only raise the 300,000 this year, we had to stay under the 6 million, which meant that we've now had 5,983,000 in investments. It should have been much more than that through this year. But we have loaned that money out over the years to 173 businesses, and we've loaned 10 million. Right now we're getting very close to 11 million that we have loaned out. And interestingly, many of our clients have come back to us once or twice or three times as they grew their businesses. So it's not just a one and done. We follow our clients. We do our very best to keep up with them, to make sure that they're doing okay, that we're there for them when they need help. I spend a lot of time on the phone, not just with FarmWorks clients, but with people involved in food businesses generally, just talking to them, listening to them, making suggestions. Perhaps you should talk to this person, that person. And we, just by the by, we have added, we've formalized again the advisors who will be listed on our website, so that if somebody needs somebody like Tim Morcom from the Perennia, then I can send that person to. If Sebastian has slugs taking out a whole row of green beans, as happened one time just before we were there, then maybe Kim can give some help and so on and so forth. So we've worked with a whole lot of people, and we do our best to work continuously with them.
That's great. You know, I can sense that even just looking at the website and what you've said, there's been a huge network that's been formed around local food security, that sort of thing, really across the province. And that connectivity, just everybody learning from each other and so on. That's a dramatic value add, not just the money. I mean, those are serious numbers, 11 million that's been loaned out, you know, and 173 businesses. Congratulations. And so that's the kind of multiplier effect, I would think. It's not just the money, it's the really building the whole sector in that local supplier capacity. I've got a question though. Who are the investors that have come in? How many of them are there? Is there
Well, I
traffic
see,
of some kind, or?
I see a few of them on this call today, so they would be familiar with what we are doing. We grew slowly. We started, as I say, with I think that first year there were 104 investors, and each year we've had somewhere around 100 investors. We do lose occasionally. We have to redeem some shares as people who have invested through the RSP program, which I'll talk about in a moment, reach age 71 and either deregister their shares and leave them with FarmWorks, which of course is preferable for us, or they take their RSPs out to switch them to to a BRIF. But over the years we've had, I think it's 574 people who have invested, and 47% of our investors have invested after the first time, have invested from in total, from 1 to 14 times. So there are people who are investing because of the benefit, which I'll describe in a minute, but also and primarily because they believe in the food system. They believe in the Pauls and Sebastians and all of the other people who are making a difference in Nova Scotia.
Fascinating. So what their return on investment, so to speak, would be that they get these tax breaks with the province. You could put it into an RRSP, and of course that just the feel good of being in the right sector and helping move things along. What else would be in it for investors? Anything come to mind?
Kathleen just mentioned that the great return to the province, and in fact that is a significant asset. And Donald Savoy a few years ago wrote about the CEDAR program and described, and more recently George Karafillis who was at CBU talked about the return to the province in investment. So people who buy shares in FarmWorks, it's a 5-year term. You stay invested for 5 years, and then another 5 and 5 if you so desire. And there's a 35% provincial tax credit for that investment, followed at 5 years by 20 and then by 10. So over 15 years, there's a 65% tax credit. And by the way, you get that tax credit upfront, so that if you choose to reinvest that money, as I did when I started, suddenly by reinvesting your tax credit, and if anybody's interested in more details, that's on the website. If you reinvest that tax credit, you can easily turn the 10,000 that I had that first year into 15, because I took the 35 and reinvested it and so on. So you can multiply your investment that way, or you can take your tax credit and use it otherwise. If you are still at the age where you are putting money into an RSP, you can put the money into your RSP through FarmWorks, and then you get that additional 35, 20, and 10, which you wouldn't be getting in any way if you were putting the money just directly into an RSP, because the RSP tax deferral is just that. It's a deferral on that amount of money. And then a real plus is that people who have RSPs with other financial institutions can transfer RSPs to FarmWorks and get 35, 20, and 10 that they otherwise would not have, that wouldn't happen otherwise. So that's a plus, plus, plus. The due diligence that we do, as Paul and Sebastian can attest to, yes, we make it as easy as we can, but I've sometimes said that we even know the color of their socks, because we are not able to take any security. The way the program is set up, was set up initially, was to ensure that this money, this local money in communities that understood their communities and the needs in their communities. And by the way, we've taken all of, you can't put fences around food, so we've taken all of Nova Scotia as our community. So the understanding, when Chris Payne, who by the way is started the program and is now on our board as one of our independent directors, when the program was set up, it was meant to ensure that local money that knew the community stayed in the community to work for the community. And that's what we're doing. We have the benefit of getting to know the clients. Our head office is right here where I'm sitting. It's not in Toronto. And we are, as directors, invested in our community. And that makes us very responsive to clients, because especially as we look at what's happening in the world today, boy, oh boy, the tiny bit of money that we are able to keep here in Nova Scotia pays major dividends to all of us. We just need for there to be more. If, as I said earlier, we started slowly and have grown slowly because we haven't spent a lot of money on infrastructure, on salaries and so on, because we want that money to go back into the people that we're investing in, and to make sure that the directors are able to keep in touch with the people who are making a huge difference for Nova Scotia.
Yeah. Now you mentioned, I think, the color of their socks, that you really get to know the clients that you're going to invest in. And that raises a question. There is a question that Paul put out in the chat. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, what I wanted to ask you, and by the way, anybody else has a question, feel free to put it into the chat. We're going to be starting to get into those here. But question for you first, Linda, is 173 businesses. You're playing in an area that's high risk. Banks don't want to go there, for example. But you're playing there. You've got quite a track record. How have you managed the pitfalls? Any defaults on the loans, that type of thing?
Interestingly, the drag-on effects, I think I'd call it, from COVID, have negatively impacted some of our clients in the last while. But overall, still, of that 10 million, well, 11 million now that we have loaned, up until 24, our loan loss was about 3%. I think when we finally get our accounting done for this year, it will be probably closer to 5%. But given what I know about the losses for other organizations, other community organizations and government lenders and so on and so forth, we're doing very well. It pains us greatly. We do everything in our power to support anybody who's having any issues. Sadly, we have had some severe health issues. We have lost a couple of clients for that reason over the years, but we have a number of interestingly, we have a number of clients who, remember what I said about relationships, we have a number of clients who have said, no, this is not working for me. I'm not going to continue to do this, but I am paying FarmWorks back. So we even have a fellow who started a small farm, and he's now doing a fabulous job of making bricks out of recycled plastic, including farm plastic. He's in New Brunswick. He's still paying us back. And so there's quite a few incidences of people who that relationship pays off, and probably the interpersonal connections are every bit as important and probably more beneficial for us than actually owning or having security on land or buildings or equipment.
Yeah, yeah. So 5%, that seems quite low to me. I don't have a vast way to compare it, but I would imagine most banks would really die to have just a 5%.
Well, I think the banks do, the commercial banks do better than that, because they take the security and try and realize on that. But there's some community organizations that are 12 and 14 and so on and so forth. And the plus with us is that our income, our interest income, pays those back. So there's never, the shareholders' investments are never at risk.
Yeah, okay. I do want to get to Paul's question. It's somewhat related to this, and it's really a question for all three of you, so feel free to jump in. He's asking, how much government interference is there with small-scale producers and food companies? So I think of that government interference maybe as that's like the overburden that you've got to work with, if you know what I mean. So feel free to jump in, any one of you. Paul, you're on mute, Paul.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
the only government interference I have, so my facility is we deal with CFIA. So they come once a year, do an audit and stuff like that. We're HACCP certified, so we have to follow all the HACCP principles. We're very comfortable in what we're doing, and so we don't. There's no really government interference, if I understand the question correctly.
So just all the food regs, you just make sure you abide by all of those, pass the inspections and so on.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we also also have an audit done by a third party, like a third party audit done every year as well too. Yeah.
Financial audit, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Sebastian, how about you? Anything come to mind there?
I would say it's pretty similar for us. We don't see a lot of government sort of oversight into what we are doing. I'd imagine maybe it's because it's all kept, what we do, it's all kept local and it's all kept within the province. I think if we were doing, any type of export, that would obviously be very, very different. maybe that's a case for keeping things local as well. But yeah, in terms of the farm, the government doesn't have much of an eye on that.
Yeah.
All right. Linda, we talked about the history of FarmWorks, 173 businesses, this network. How much have you moved the needle in local food security in Nova Scotia? Now, there's a big question. Impact.
So when I was growing up, 80% of our food approximately was produced here in Nova Scotia. Now, maybe 10%. We hear arguments against supply management. If we took out the 210 dairy farms and turned that into 10 dairy farms, if we lost the 40 or so each of egg producers and chicken producers, for example, Scotian Gold and the co-op stores and so on and so forth that sell significant amounts to the supply managed producers, they would if those suppliers weren't supported by their customers, then they might gradually go away. So we need supply management. And just by the by, I did a little calculation the other day about the fact that if you look at individual income in I think it was 1960 versus the cost of eggs and milk, and you move that to the figure given was for 2008, which would be higher now. So the cost of eggs now would be over $12 and milk would be over $5. So when you think about what you are paying relative to income, and we do know that, we know that Canada, I think we're number 24th on the scale of how much of our income we use to feed ourselves. So yes, food is expensive, and as a medical microbiologist, just for all of those years, many of you who've heard me talk know that I'm very, very concerned about our health outcomes and about the connection between our health outcomes and the amount of ultra-processed, less expensive food that people are eating. One of our aims when we started FarmWorks was to make sure that the farmers who already back then were not doing all that well and who are now doing less well, because for the last 7 years, the net income of farmers across Nova Scotia has been underwater. So we had our work cut out for us in the beginning. Our work has become even more challenging, and a lot more work has to be done in Nova Scotia Loyal, and whatever programs, whatever we can do to raise awareness in schools and universities of the value of eating healthy local food, which I am assured by a number of our clients who have local source market and uprooted market and others, that the local food is not, sometimes it is more expensive, sometimes it's not, than what you'll find in the chain stores. But healthy local food that's picked at its peak of freshness and doesn't travel a whole lot of miles is a recipe for better health. So if you look at what's happened over the years, as we, over the last 50 years, um, um, outsourced responsibility for our food. Now, in particular, when we see what's happening, we have to take back responsibility. And once we can take in more money for FarmWorks and get past our regulatory challenge, by the way, once we get past that and open the next offer and start asking people to think about where their food is coming from, what it tastes like, what impact it's having on the local economy, then we all need to work together to improve the outcomes across Nova Scotia.
Yeah, it does seem like we've been making some gains, maybe slow, but we've been making some gains. You know, the school food programs have been building up pretty noticeably over the past 4 or 5 years. Even before COVID came along, a lot more local businesses, some distribution hubs starting to build up, that sort of thing. So there is some gains to be made, but I agree with you. We've got to all take responsibility, and it's got to become a lot more top of mind for people where food comes from and the importance of that, which is the way it's been really from the dawn of humanity. You always had to keep track of where your food came from. Otherwise, you didn't have any. So what are your wildest dreams for the future of FarmWorks? I assume we can get past that 6 million cap, and where would you like to see this going in the years ahead?
We export almost all of our funds, whether it's retirement funds, the money that we put into the various markets, our RIFs and our RSPs and so on. 99.5% of our money goes out of the province into, we don't always know where. I would really like to see, along with Woody Tash and the Slow Money Movement and Michael Schumann, who spoke on this program 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, I would like to see us keep more of our money here, put it directly or indirectly through FarmWorks into building our own capacity, not just to feed ourselves, but to, Leslie, cooperative housing, and so on and so forth. And by the way, speaking of Leslie, one of the discussions that I've had with a couple of our clients over the last little while is a cooperative of all of FarmWorks clients. So when the situation arises that I can't share what Paul is doing with the Station Food Hub, but they can maybe working in a cooperative can share that kind of information, likewise with farmers and distributors and restaurants and so on and so forth. So I really want to see us in a situation where we're not going to get back to 60% of our food grown locally anytime soon. But I did have occasion to say to the Premier a couple of years ago that my aim was to bring back more and more production. We have enough land in Nova Scotia that we could be feeding ourselves. And that's, yes, we have windstorms that negatively impact greenhouses and growing tunnels and so on, but we have more opportunities to do more with producing our own food. And sadly, climate change is making it even more important that we look after ourselves, because when you look at the amount of production, not just due to what's happening currently in the United States, but when you look at the number of farmers in the United States who are suffering massively because of climate change, we can um, grow a lot more of our own food here, and we should be doing that for all kinds of reasons.
Oh, I agree with you. We've got a huge potential, and I think we're slowly getting there. And you know, when you really work through it, the whole reason you've been able to do what you've done and the whole sector, the food sector, is because of that local investment. That, you know, even though it's a pittance compared to how much of disposable investment income gets sent out of the province. It is that local nut that's enabled us to do all of this. So it's really, how do we build that amount of local investment that's coming in? And that could be a fantastic future for FarmWorks to really do that. You know, with this CEDIF, with other CEDIFs starting up in the province, I know there's CEDIFs in New Brunswick and PEI that are getting off the ground. We really kind of cut the mold, and then they started to follow as well. So really across the whole region, there is at least this vehicle as a CEDIF for local money to come in and build those local economies. And that's why they call it economic development. It's building local economies, building local agency, local empowerment against the forces of globalization, trade wars, and so on, securing local supply chains, everything that's important. One or two more questions here. I'm going to go back to Paul and Sebastian. What are your wildest dreams for growing your businesses?
I know for me it's very similar to Linda. Like I strongly believe in building our economy and you know, improve food security in Nova Scotia. I would love for one day to see you know, see more investment in food manufacturing, more investment in our farmers, more investment in, you know, the entrepreneurs that's coming up to it, that's in the industry, that wants to build the industry, that has good intentions and want to do better. And so I'd love to see a lot of that. And you know, I've always talked about climate change that Linda mentioned there. That's huge for us. And you know, I think we can do a lot more greenhouse farming here as well. And it's not just climate change and investments that we need to look at. I never thought of this before until, you know, what's going on right now with tariffs. You know, that is something that I never even thought about. That now you have to add that to the equation, and we really don't know what the future is going to bring, because we didn't know that we'd be in this situation. No one predicted this type of stuff, right? So we don't know what the future is going to bring for our industry, for industry. So we need to do what we can right now to secure and help food security in Nova Scotia. So I just think that we just need more of us, more farmers, more food producers and stuff.
Thank you, Paul. That's great. Sebastian, a question came in. It might be best to you. Rochelle asks, do you feel any pressure to scale, or do you feel that small producers are respected within the province?
That's a great question.
Since I've asked him that question.
It's funny because I think initially, I don't know, I think I waffle back and forth, to be completely honest. When I first had the sort of dream of what Green Gardens was going to be, it was going to be small scale, and it was going to be just myself, and it was going to be what I can do on my own. And then as I think about it, I think, you know, do I need to be bigger to grow more food for more people. And that's like it's a huge sort of philosophical question. Like, is that actually something that I want to do? Is that something that interests me, is to, have more employees, have that sort of burden. But I think I'm not answering the question at all. But I think I do feel a little bit of pressure. However, I also think that we need to think about what each of us can do on an individual scale as well. I think if we each had a backyard garden, or if we each, if there were 100 small farms versus 10 big farms, our food resilience is better, because if 10 farms fail, not to sort of go on the negative side here, but if 10 large farms fail versus 10 small farms, you still have 90 small farms to pick up the slack and to keep going.
Yeah. I see your point about decentralized and localized resiliency kind of baked into the culture, into the landscape that way.
But to answer also the second part of that question, which I think is very important, I do think that small producers and small growers are getting a lot of respect, which I think, being at the farmers market, especially over the last few years, haven't been easy weather-wise. We've had a lot of difficult things to deal with, and it's that face time that you don't get at at a large chain grocery store, where you have people coming to you and seriously asking you how I'm doing, not just sort of in a farming way, but how I'm doing, like, personally. Like, am I okay? I think the respect is certainly there.
That's a theme that's, I think, gone through this whole hour that we've had. We are coming up on the hour, and thank you, Sebastian. I want to thank all three of you. This has been fantastic conversation. And I want to thank everybody else for joining us today. I do want to mention the upcoming webinars that we've got. I mentioned they're on the last Thursday of each month. So on May 29th, we're going to be talking about the cooperatives, the cooperative movement, is a long history in Nova Scotia, goes back to the Antigonish movement and Moses Cody back in the 1920s. So it's kind of baked into our blood, you could say, what co-ops are. We're going to have Just Us Coffee on, and we hope to have one or two more cooperatives as well. On June 26th, we're going to be talking about local energy. We hope to have some municipalities. We're just confirming some of those, and the importance of being able to produce your energy locally. For those same reasons, local investment brings local agency there at the community level. And then on July 31st, we're going to get into housing and the different models of housing, how those have developed in the province, and kind of the pros and cons of each of those. So some really good topics coming up. Get on our mailing list, stay tuned, and we certainly hope to see you again in future webinars. So again, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Bob. And Andy, this was fun, and great to be on here with Paul and Sebastian, and hope to see you guys before too long.
Yeah, three of you are great. Love it. Thank you much.
Thank you very much for hosting.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Bob, a quick note. We have a client who is involved in local energy